But I slept on those words instead. You haunt the stairways in my head. You're the monster under my bed. Reach for me when I repent, and I should have learned. I should have learned. You're the monster under my bed, making mess I keep trying to address. Cannot come to terms with the monster under my bed.
All right, we about to start right now. Let's go. We live. Yeah, so breaking news, Westbrook traded to Washington in exchange for John Wall and a first-round pick. I could dig it. I can dig it.
We need that kind of
You're not
activity.
You're definitely not here if you follow us for Rockets chatter, though. That's for sure. Feels like it's been a day of Houston news drop, and apparently also the Astros tendered Carlos Correa, Almedas Diaz, and somebody else this evening too. And Lance McCullers Jr. I could get down with all three of those.
What's up, Sean? How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm glad I remembered my hat because damn, I'm bald. Yes, sir.
Nice flag back there, man. Nice flag.
Thank you, sir. It's gonna fall down before the end of the show. I guarantee it. Call it a
What are
hundred.
the odds? What are the odds?
It fell down before we even finished prep, so I'm gonna say we don't even make it like 30 minutes, and that sucker's falling off.
So the over under 30 minutes. Let's see how it goes. Place your bets, people.
Yeah, place them now because it's going fast. I guarantee it. Anyways, let's talk Dynamo, right? Like, I mean, yes, I really want to talk John Wall right now. Trust me, I really, really do. But you know, Dynamo released some news. We were waiting on Monday and Tuesday, and then they finally released it today. Which, you know, I kind of did say that it could potentially be by sometime today. We know who the Dynamo have picked up their options on, and who they did not. There's some other teaser news in there. What? Sorry?
Before you get into that, I'm sorry. Is it coincidence that it seems like Dynamo are the last team in MLS to release this kind of news?
They're not the last one. They're not the last one by far. I do know, or I've seen on Twitter at least a few times, that, and Glenn tweeted it out, that part of the holdup in getting the news out was waiting to inform all parties that were involved. So, you know, players that needed to be informed before, before they're announced that we didn't pick up their contract option, or we did. You know, if I'm a player and I find out from social media, I'm gonna be pissed. So. Definitely get the concept and idea there. So let's talk those. And the only reason I say that is because, let's be honest, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. That's gonna be the big. Yeah, that just dropped. Nest. I don't know how. He obviously doesn't listen to the show over. I'm just kidding. I know he does. But I'm excited. Not gonna lie, John Wall to the Rockets is fantastic. But let's talk about these moves, and obviously the moves are going to be the most important thing of the show. So Dynamo exercised contract options for 10 players following the 2020 MLS regular season. The Dynamo have an additional 11 players under contract and enter the season with off-season with 22 players under contract after restructuring terms with an international player. It does not say which international player they restructured terms with. But the exciting news, poor Nest, he's so lost. I'm just gonna say this: Nest has like the hardest job of all of us because he's got to juggle broadcasting, and then he's also actually right now, I guarantee you, trying to keep up with Twitter and everybody talking about John Wall. Because the dude is a Rocket. Like, he loves the Rockets. Look, I love the Rockets too. I ain't gonna lie, but
oh man, I love the Rockets too, dude. I'm over here verifying everything right now.
I know. It's crazy, but anyways, so let's talk about the players that the contract options were declined. Let's start with those players, and I want to see well, you had a poll out today You want to talk about that real quick?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get you off of Twitter for just
Yeah,
a moment,
so
so you can stop reading up on John Wall and start reading up on your poll.
no, so basically what I asked the fan base out today, was obviously the roster changes or options have been picked up, who have the decisions that have been made of who's gonna be picked up and who's gonna be let go, whatever. And I basically asked, you happy with the decisions? 63% of people say yes, and 38% say no. Obviously, not everybody's gonna be truly, 100% with the players that they picked up, or 100% with the players they declined options on. But for the most part, I think everybody's pretty much on par with who they thought was gonna stay and who was gonna go. None of the players declined on here that I see were basically players that I thought the Dynamo were gonna keep, per se. And the ones that they kept were pretty much the players that I thought that they were going to keep, as for with the exception of maybe one player that I thought, oh, well, I kind of forgot about him. So, but other than that, I think everybody's good. I think the majority thing of here was the Boniak situation, what they're going to do with Boney, and I'm sure that there's going to be something going on. I'm sure there's conversations in the background, but this right now for this sole purpose of options being picked up or declined, he's on the decline list right now.
Yeah. I think decision is still out on Boney and Minor. But we'll get to that in just a second. I've got some. Andres shared some stuff about that earlier that I want to share. But first, let's talk about the contract options that they declined this offseason. So we know that 14 players were up for options. Defender Kyle Adams was declined. He was an RGV center back / outside back. And defender Victor Cabrera, we know he was a center back for us. Traded for him or picked him up or signed him. I think we traded for him, and no, we did trade for him, and we got him in the Kyoto trade.
Yeah, I spoke about that on Twitter a little bit, and I will talk about that after you finish.
Yeah,
the
we
list
will.
here.
Declined option on goalkeeper Cody Cropper, basically our backup goalkeeper, if you will. Declined option on, and this is my favorite one, midfielder Tomas Martinez is no longer a Houston Dynamo player. Thank the Lord, I was ready for that to happen. Now, to his credit, he was only making $350,000 last year, but still, that was overpaid for what he gave us. Also, Ronaldo Pena had his option declined. Another player who basically I felt like brought absolutely nothing to the pitch when he was on it. Forward Michael Salazar, for those that don't know, because you never really saw him play for the Dynamo, even under Wilmer, who was part of bringing him in. He was a player that played a lot for RGV, and then when he got to the Dynamo, he was basically silent and quiet and did nothing. And he was someone I had high hopes for because he had a decent showing in RGV before he came here. And then finally declined the option on Wilfred Zahibo, who I had really high hopes for and had hyped up quite a bit, and I regret tremendously because he was absolutely not the player I expected we were getting. To be fair, we traded for him by trading away Tommy Mack, so it's kind of it's kind of a lose-lose. Like if you keep Tommy Mack, are you really going to get anything out of it? If you trade for Zahibo, are you really getting anything in return? And I guess the answer is no. Those are all the contract options declined. Is there anybody on that particular list right there? Kyle Adams, Victor Cabrera, Cody Cropper, Tomas Martinez, Ronaldo Pena, Michael Salazar, or Wilfred Zahibo that you would have rathered us keep or exercise their contract option?
To be honest, for me, if I was in their position, I think this is right. The only one that I could possibly maybe defend would be the Victor Cabrera thing because of obviously the trade that we made with Impact for Kyoto. So, and obviously I think he was injured like half the season, and I don't know if he really got a fair shot. I mean, he played a lot, especially he played for when Struna was sent to the bench, and I guess maybe Tad just didn't think he was a quality or good enough, or who knows. The thing is like, just the simple fact because he was somebody that we targeted in a trade with another team to send one of our best offensive players back to them, and puts a double negative towards the Victor Cabrera experiment not working, because obviously what Kyoto has done with the Impact, I think that he led them in goals this year, and then obviously helped them go to the playoffs, and he even scored in the playoffs. So it was a positive for their end, and this looks like the Dynamo got fleeced by the Impact. So other than that, no, I wouldn't keep any of these guys.
Uh,
I had high hopes for Pena in the beginning of the year, but it just didn't work out, man.
I do. I do kind of agree with you on the Montreal, and they're no longer Montreal Impact. For 2021, they will be known as Montreal FC. You will remember when the Houston Dynamo FC thing was announced and everybody was all upset. The first thing I said was, keep in mind, guys, this is basically coming down from MLS. This is something you're going to see more and more clubs having, switching to and using. No, it's official, Kenny. They may not have said it from the Montreal FC account, but it's official. MLS is pushing it. They've been pushing it now for the last few seasons, last couple of seasons in particular. Again, every expansion team that's coming into the league, what do they have at the end of their name? FC. There is not a single team. Montreal Impact actually were the outside of. When I was looking at expansion teams, Montreal Impact were the oldest club that didn't have a world football-ish type of moniker in their name somewhere. If you think about like DC United has United in their name. Obviously, Houston Dynamo FC. We got FC. Inter Miami, Inter, Real Salt Lake. You have Real. Et cetera, et cetera.
What about,
Sporting KC is Sporting.
What about the Seattle Sounders?
Seattle Sounders actually have an FC in their name. They just don't use it, just like Portland Timbers don't use it. Most people don't know that.
Yeah, just trying to think about it over just top of my head. Yeah, but no, I mean, I understand. I guess I understand what MLS is trying to do, trying to make it, more globalized. Obviously over here in the United States, we're not too used to using those kind of initials or abbreviations, to the end of our team names, unless you're the Washington football team. But like other than that, I mean, every team in every league has their namesake, and that's what they are. And it's usually something that has to do with something that goes along with the city. But obviously, I guess MLS is trying to propel themselves and push themselves into that global market, and hopefully seem more attractive to global players. Maybe, I don't know. It could be a marketing scheme for them to kind of make themselves more appealing to players overseas to come over. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, mostly, like I said, I don't care too much for it. But if that's the direction they're going, I guess that's the direction they're going. So it is what it is.
It is. It's just one of those really stupid things that, and the reason I say it's stupid is, sorry, I'm so confused. Oh, we had an ad that just played. What? Hold up.
We did.
Oh, because we're affiliated. That's right. We affiliate. Oh, that's right. We got some announcements, some news of our own. I forgot about that. We'll get to that in a minute.
But before we go on with that, so like in global soccer, for those who don't know, the reason why clubs have like FC or SC at the end of their names or whatever is because like, for example, like FC Barcelona.
Yeah.
FC Barcelona, they're not only a soccer team; they have a basketball team. They have a women's soccer team. They have the other variations of sports underneath that Barcelona brand. It's controlled by that city or by the owner. So, like, for example, if Gabriel Brenner was the owner of Dynamo, Rockets, Texans, every sports team that's in here, Houston Dynamo or whatever name he chose to keep for
Houston
the
FC
franchise
is what he would choose in that case. I mean, let's be real.
It would be Houston FC Football Club or Houston SC Soccer Club, Houston BC, a basketball club or whatever the case, So that's the reason for that they use it globally, because a lot of these clubs not only have clubs soccer base wise, but they have basketball teams, volleyball teams, women's soccer teams, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I've always found the kind of European approach, and it's true in like Argentina. It's really even true in Mexico if you think about Tigres and the way that they're kind of built. They're built on a university concept, and universities they have more than just soccer. I guarantee it. Um, but Kenny says, by the way, John Walker wanted to go with Houston United, but it was shot down. Yeah, no, the Dynamo was guaranteed to be kept. I mean, I'm sure they wanted to move away from Dynamo, not move away from Dynamo. They wanted to move away from some of the old stuff, but I guarantee you that Deanna Witter was like, John, no, that's not happening. But let's talk about options. We're all over the place tonight, and that's just because, frankly, there's so much to talk about right now, and we're excited, obviously. But let's talk about options that were picked up this off season because I think this is going to be really good. City of Soccer podcast, those guys are good. They tend to be pretty on point. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was something that was considered. I don't know if he wanted to go with it, but it might have been something that was on the table and considered. So contracts that were picked up or options that were picked up for 2021. First one, I think I agree with Darwin Seren. We talked about that one. Tell me your thoughts. Definitely should have kept him, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've been praising him the whole time we've been doing this show for the season. Darwin's one of those players that showed up and he took advantage of the opportunities that he was given because before the season started, he was a bench player. And then he ended up being one of our most important players in the midfield that brought that grit and brought that attitude to the midfield. And I think when we had that little run of success during the start of the reset, he was heavily involved in that winning part of our season.
Yeah. So next up on the list, and I agree with you on Seren. I don't. Again, he's all things considered, he was probably near the top of my list, if not at the top of my list for MVP of the Dynamo for the season. So next up, they picked up they picked up option on defender Alejandro Fuenmayor. Tell me your thoughts on that one.
Well, I've always been a supporter of Fuenmayor. I think that he's been just not given enough time to be sharp enough. I think that what gave him the benefit here is his age. I think he's 23 still, 22 or 23, somewhere around that. So obviously Tab, wanting to go more youthful and him being around already for, I think this is going to be his third MLS season coming up. It gives him a little bit of, breathing room to kind of work with him to see what he's really about. Because, I mean, he has the size that you want on a center back. And he's young enough and he has a lot of athleticism to play alongside if it is Kiki or whatever. But I'm not against it. I like Alejandro a lot. Hopefully he gets more playing time so he can really show his skills, and hopefully he proves everybody else wrong and makes Tab look like a genius.
Yeah, Nestor says Fuenmayor is 24. He is 24, and we picked him up when he was like 21. So yeah, he'll be entering into basically his fourth season with us. And keep in mind, he was kind of on the outs with Wilmer. So it's one of those players that frankly lost a lot of development time because of how Wilmer kind of handled players in general, especially younger players. And Wilmer, don't get me wrong, Wilmer set us back when it comes to younger players in terms of development. But he's one of those players that I think can still be a good to decent player. I wouldn't put him in the upper echelon of center backs in MLS, and even if he improves tremendously this season, I'm still not going to put him there. But he's the type of center back I think that Tab is looking for. And with a coach like Tab, I think Tab is willing to give him another shot. Obviously, he is because they re-signed him picked up his contract option. But go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm saying, if Fuenmayor comes in and next season he's the first off the bench as far as center backs, is like our number 3 center back, that'll be great. That'll be good. I mean, like I said, he's 24. I'm hoping they're going to go out there and try to find a quality center back to pair up with Kiki or whoever they're trying to pair up with, for the 2 center backs or whatever. But he comes in as our number 3. I think that's great for him. It's an improvement for him. It's a upgraded position because he was our number 4 this past season, and sometimes he was even overlooked as the number 4. But if he's given a chance to come in, and play 15, 20 minutes a game and play the cup games and play those midweek games where maybe one of the center backs are tired or just, injured or whatever. And, I think that's really good for him. I think his problem is that he just needs more playing time, more consistent playing time instead of just playing once every 2 months.
Yeah, and when he played 2 or 3 matches in a row, I felt like he actually showed out pretty well. He had a few moments that were shaky, but let's be fair, this defense in general had many moments that were shaky. So if it's just a few moments, I'm willing to accept it. Moving on from him,
Like I
I
said,
think we. Oh, go ahead.
oh no, before we go, and like I said, I blame that to the fact that he didn't get enough consistent playing time.
Yep.
You expect you expect the players who are constantly on the pitch, Kiki, Minor, Adam, Valentine to be on point. But if even those players are not on point, how do you expect somebody who's only playing once every 5-6 weeks to be on point?
Absolutely, absolutely. Moving on from Fuenmayor, and the only reason I'm kind of moving through these as fast as I am is because we have more to talk about.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Surge chat is
Junqua?
also blown up. So next up is going to be they picked up the option. There's no doubt in my mind why you picked this guy's option up, Sam Junqua. I don't think there's a person on this planet that would argue with Sam Junqua picking up his option.
No, I mean, young player, big player, physical. I mean, he obviously he's your backup left back to Lundy, and I think maybe he might be one of those players that you can kind of try to train to play multiple positions. Maybe even throw him in there as a center back. Train him and see how he does over there, and if he able to help you out in that position too, then great, because he's a big body.
Sorry. Nestor says it's important to know Junqua's 24 as well, same age as Fuan Moyer. So again, younger players, keeping them around, there's nothing wrong with that. And I agree with you. I mean, again, Sam Junqua, the way he played those final matches when he played, I mean, the guy showed out and he balled out. And this was a player that sat behind Lundqvist all season long. Essentially waiting for his opportunity, and wait for his opportunity he did, and when he got it, he absolutely ran with it. Was he the best player on the pitch every night? Probably not, but he sure as hell was putting out 110% to be the best player on the pitch every night.
And then when it came to set pieces, you know that he was one of the players that they were going to look for.
And what's the one thing we have, without a doubt, forget the defense, what's the one thing attack-wise we have struggled with for so long? We've never had anybody, not in the last 5 years, it feels like, that's been able to score on set pieces. The last time we had somebody would have been... Oh, go ahead.
I'm saying, like, ever since Brad Davis retired, our set pieces have just gone to crap. I mean, because before, when he was with us, we were always top of the league of scoring goals off set pieces, and now, like, for the last 4 or 5 years, ever since he's been gone, we haven't come nowhere near the middle of the pack. We've always been below that, way below that, and I think that this last season we were like one of the 2 or 3 worst teams on set pieces. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you mentioned he's big. He's gritty. He's the type of player, frankly, that I feel like you could, late in a match, he's that type of player that you can send forward and keep your center backs back, which is really what you want to do. And he's going to be strong enough and big enough to deal with the center backs of the opposing team. I mean, just fantastic. Anyways, like I said, perfect. I can't argue that. Ford, Nico Lemoyne. How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, obviously another academy product, another young player. I know he was used a lot during the MLS's back tournament. And he showed, he did pretty good. I mean, I can't complain. It's his first professional season with the team, and you can't really expect too much, especially of this crazy year that we just had. So I'm looking forward to seeing if he grows and then he becomes a quality bench player, and if he becomes more than that, great.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agreed. He clearly had Tab's eye early on in the kind of return. Even in the MLS's back tournament, he had opportunities. I find it interesting. Tab clearly sees something in him in terms of capability and production opportunity. Anytime you can have a young player coming out of your academy who can play minutes at the MLS level and play them comfortably enough that you don't feel like you're losing anything playing him. I mean, it's just absolutely a great pickup. And again, 20 years old, you can't argue with that. I mean, getting a 20-year-old to play on the pitch it's about time. Is what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
And in the times that I've seen him play, I mean, he's obviously not the quickest, but his footwork is pretty good, and he's not losing the ball. I think that's one of the things that Tab is really focusing on. That make sure you have players that can play with the ball, not lose the ball so quickly, because obviously our transitional game is horrible. That's why we get scored on a lot from counterattacks and all that stuff. So if you have players that can hold on to the ball and then not lose it, then obviously you reduce that from happening.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, 100%. And that, I think that's a difference too. I know that's the difference coming out of Wilmer to Tab, is Tab's focus on keeping that ball in possession, midfield defense, not giving the ball up when you're creating, when you're passing out wide or you're keeping it in the middle of the pitch. And both Palomino and Junqua did not Palomino, Lemoyne and Junqua did very good at that. In their starts and their opportunities they were given. We will get to that in just a minute, guys. I know, trust me, I'm already talking about it myself unintentionally. They also picked up option of Adam Lundqvist. How do you feel about that, considering that we picked up the option on Sam Junqua as well? 2 left backs.
I think that was a given. I mean, Lundqvist was like our Iron Man. Aside from the matches that he didn't play because of suspension or whatever, this guy played every minute basically of every aspect of the season, whether it was MLS back or the restarts and stuff like that. So this guy was always there. I like the fact that he doesn't come off the pitch. He doesn't get injured, and I like how involved he is with the offense when he's pushing up. Obviously, when you have a fullback that pushes up like that, you would hope that he can come back and play some defense when he needs to. And I mean, he does play good D too, but I think he needs to improve on that aspect of his game a little bit more. So. But I'm not surprised there. I think obviously he's your starting left back.
He is, and I think you enter just a slight bit more of a rotation between him and Sam Junqua on the season now. Sam Junqua gives you what he showed you, gives you the opportunity to rest Lundqvist a little bit more than you did this season, and you feel confident that Junqua can handle it. And having a kid that you can put out on the pitch, again, 20 years old. And give your 26-year-old at this point becoming an elder statesman of the Dynamo. It feels like anytime you can give him rest and keep him healthy and look, we got lucky with some players not getting injured this year. Injuries are going to happen at some point, so do what we can to keep them healthy and give them the best chance to make it a full season. So. With that, let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about homegrown defender Eric McHugh. They picked up his option. How you feeling about that one? Didn't get to see him here with the Dynamo, but he played a little bit with RGV. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, well, obviously, again, this is another youth signing, and obviously one of those homegrown that the Dynamo get to keep. And obviously, when you make these option pickups, you also got to understand that not a player that can be selected on the expansion draft or whatever kind of draft that that's coming up for the Austin FC and the other clubs or whatever. So. He's a player you don't have to worry about getting moved anywhere. And a defender, I mean, the Dynamo have needed defensive help for as long as I can remember. And hopefully this kid gets his opportunity. He grows into his body and he can grow bigger and be more physical. I'm not sure if he'll make the first team or be in the first team squad next season. It could be a RGV thing again or U23 thing or whatever happens with that. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's a homegrown. So I'm guessing the contract's not even that big or nothing like that. So I see no problem with that.
Absolutely, he is a tall kid.
Lanky.
He's tall. He's lanky. I think he's more the center back style that Tab wants. But didn't get to see him much. Like I said, he got time with RGV. George says he did okay with RGV. He's 19 years old. I mean, the kid, he could be a great backup. I don't know if he's necessarily top level MLS talent, but I think a lot of times we put the onus on center backs and defenders to prevent goals from going in. But frankly, the way that Tab has everything set up, it starts with the midfield. The midfield's got to be better than they were this season. Because a lot of times we gave up goals that started with a midfield turnover, or a turnover, out wide with the outside backs. And you want a faster, quicker, maybe a slightly less physical center back to handle those opportunities, especially against teams that have faster, quicker frontmen. So enough on him. Like I said, I think it's fine. Goalkeeper Michael Nelson, draft pick from just a couple of years ago. He's been with RGV, played with RGV this season, picked up his option. What do you feel about that one?
Yeah, obviously with them not picking up Cropper's option, you would think Michael Nelson be in prime position for that number 2 goalkeeper spot, which I thought he wasn't prime. He should have been prime position last season because the few games that he played a year prior to that, when he played the Open Cup games, he looked really good out there. I was really impressed with what he has. But obviously, you want competition for that number 2 spot behind Marco, and obviously Tab feels that he's done that with whatever he's seen from Nelson and RGV, and decided to go with not re-signing Cody and bringing him on as number 2. But obviously, this is just the beginning. Who knows? We might have another goalkeeping signing this season. But we'll see. I'm not opposed to it. Michael's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've seen of Michael Nelson has been good as a goalkeeper. He's very athletic, and I think he's the type of keeper that, given an opportunity, of course, behind Marco Maric, who knows, but given an opportunity, if Marco goes, suspension or goes down with an injury, God forbid, I do feel, plenty comfortable with Michael Nelson stepping in. Moving on from Nelson, homegrown midfielder Marcelo Palomino. I think there's no doubt on this one, but I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, aside from Adam, I think this was a no-brainer. Marcelo was one of our big signings last season, even though he is signed on a homegrown contract. But he was one of those players that, we wanted so bad because of the talent that we had, and obviously the connection he has with Tab from prior with the U20s, all that stuff. And unfortunately for him, injuries kept him off the pitch a lot last season, and this is kind of like a redo this season, and hopefully, like I said, his full potential is shown. He's one of those players that he's even though he's young, we're expecting a lot more from him than we would from, like, let's say Lemoyne or Junqua at that, or even obviously McHugh. But Palomino's one of those players we are expecting to hopefully come out and show out and fight for one of those starting 11 positions, well, one of those starting midfield positions.
Yeah, and I've heard that during various interviews that Tab's given that Tab has spoken very highly of both Palomino and Lemoyne, and one of the reasons he didn't play them as much towards the end of the season is because he wanted to protect them going into next season. And if that's the case, if that really is how Tab feels, then all the more power to him, because I am down for a young team next season. Of course, because Marcelo is he's what, 18, 19 now.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see the fact that they brought back Darwin Saran as being like a stopgap, where he's starting right now as a starter, and then let Marcelo come in, easily be kind of that backup to him and play those last 15-20 minutes of the game until he's comfortable enough to play a full game or whatever, which is fine with me. Like I said, I just need to see Marcelo more on the pitch, and to see him on that game day 18, and hopefully eventually see him in that starting 11, because there's so much talent in this kid and so much praise from your coach, obviously, because you worked with him before and he speaks very highly, but we just need to see that talent showcased on the pitch and not just by word of mouth.
Indeed. And I feel like having watched Marcelo in terms of free kicks, both preseason and otherwise, that is one thing that he is very good at. He was inches from an assist in the final dying minutes of that match, the last match of the season, and or two matches before the end of the season. I don't remember exactly which match it was, but I mean, the free kick was just, the service was just perfect. And so, it's one of those players, there's no doubt you had to, again, homegrown, that makes it a kind of a given anyways. But at 19 years old, thank you, Nestor, 19 years old, yeah, I mean, just the kid has plenty of talent. Maybe we're hyping him too much. I don't know, but if nothing else, Tab appreciates and likes him, so all the better moving into next season. And lastly, they picked up the contract option on Matthias Vera. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I mean, obviously Matthias ended up being our captain, so I'm sure that Tab has very high respect and is very respected uh, by the fact that Matthias is a constant professional. He always comes out to play 100%. I don't ever see him have a take a playoff, honestly, and I think that's why he wears our captain's armband now. And I'm happy to have him back, man. Matthias is one of those players that I think Jordan actually did a good job scouting and bringing him in, and obviously Tab put him in and gave him the reins of captain, and he's done a really good job with it. So yeah, I'm happy to see Matthias back.
Yeah, it's interesting when you kind of look over the players that we've brought back and the players we have under contract. You still see the majority of the same starting lineup that we kind of ended the season with almost. And so it's just it's an interesting kind of shakeout. But Vera, I think there's no doubt that that's a guy you have to bring back. Even if he doesn't end up starting, which I don't think there's any doubt he's going to, but even if he doesn't end up starting every match, he's a player that you can give the captain's armband to. And yet another player that frankly is becoming an elder statesman for the Dynamo. He's a player that since he's been here, he's been a stalwart player in that center mid, and frankly has proven to be everything we hoped he would be.
I mean, and if you look at the players that they declined, basically, I mean, you look at those players and you're thinking, okay, I know we can find a young, hungry player to play at the level of these players have played.
Yeah.
And why not? Why not go younger? Why not go somewhere to play that's more hungry, that wants to come in and prove their worth and prove that they need to be in the starting 11? Because, like I said, you talk about a player like Tomas Martinez, who we had such high hopes for when he first signed in, right? When he first came in, man, I don't know if it's just one of the things with the whole Wilmer thing, where it just kind of shattered his confidence or whatever, or and then when Tab came in, he basically didn't work under his system. But regardless of what happened in that experiment with Tomas, I'm sure we have a player that, can give you the same level of play that Tomas has been giving you up to this point. That's in the academy, or maybe that's Marcelo, taking Tomas's place, as that backup number 10 at the moment. But another one like Ronaldo Pena, unfortunately he didn't pan out. He just didn't pan out, and it is what it is. But you have a player like Nico Limon who can play that up front. Maybe he replaces him in that position. So I mean, you could, as far as the players that they declined, those players are replaceable easily.
Yeah, for sure. And I was just taking a look actually, taking a look at the players that are under contract for 2021 at this point. But before I get to that list, I want to throw this out there. So this is part of the actual announcement that they released. Jose Bizama agreed to a restructured contract, and the Chilean defender will return for the 2021 season. So he's a cheaper player. Restructured means that they lowered the value of his contract. And then, go ahead.
If you let me speak a little bit. Yeah, which in case happy to see this move, and I'm happy that there was no ego involved in this happening, because as a player, when you're being told, hey, we need you to lower your contract because you haven't given us a par with what your pay is, it kind of hurts as a player, right? But I think Bizama has seen that he came in here when he signed him. I think we all had a lot of we're intrigued in what he can bring and what he can bring to the club, because obviously he's a Chilean international. He's played a handful of games for the Chilean national team, so he has qualities. We know that. It's just that he's been injured on and off, and it's been like these just nagging injuries that just for some reason have kept him off the pitch. And again, it's another one of those things where when he does get on the pitch, he doesn't get on there constant enough to get sharpness and to really develop his game and progress his game. Because he's another young player too. I think he's 25, if I'm not mistaken, 25, 26, around there. So, and you have, and as a player that plays for a national, a big big country in the soccer world, you know. So I mean, I'm glad that they were able to find a compromise there, and that he's coming back to for the 2021 season.
And what is interesting about that, you have Jose Bisama, you have Ian Hoffman, who's converted to a right back at this point. Sam Junqua, left back. I mentioned Jose Bisama, right back. Adam Lunkovic, left back, and Zarek Valentin, left back, or right back. So you have five outside backs. Something's got to give there.
I mean, you know, and I think Bizama's one of those players that you can convert to a midfielder, you know, or even Valentin. But I think Valentin's
I think
more
Junqua's the same way, actually. Being really honest with you, I think any of those guys could play midfield.
Yeah, well, I think Sam Junqua could do better as a DM. But but Bizama can play. Maybe he's that box to box number 8 that we've been looking for. You know, that backup. Fair. You know, maybe, who knows? Like I said, there's a plan to this, and plus, and even if none of them are converted, it's competition for each one another to push the other one. You know, because to be honest, in my humble opinion, you know, if Bizama can ever get to full quality and full, you know, game mode, and not worry about these injuries, I think that he can push Valentino or even surpass him. And then you bring in a younger player like Hoffman, who's going to be hungry. He's going to push those two guys, you know, because he wants to see time on the pitch, you know, and so on and so on and so on. So I think this is great to have all this competition. I'm so for the fact that Tab wants competition on every position. No matter who you are, you're not guaranteed your spot. That's what I like. That's what I want to see.
So you say that, and I'm going to throw a caveat in here. We have currently 3 center backs under contract: Kiki Struna, Alejandro Fuenmayor, and Eric McHugh. There is no doubt, based on that, we will be signing or trading for a center back before the end of the off season. You don't go into the season with just three center backs on your roster.
I'm expecting 2 more at least, at the very least.
Yep.
If not 3. You know, depend. Like I said, a lot of players are going to become available here pretty soon. You know, after the expansion draft and after the re-entry drafts and all that other stuff that goes on in MLS offseason, a lot of players are going to be available to the Dynamo. A lot of, you know, and maybe it's just, you know, surplus requirement for other teams or whatever, but I'm sure they'll find 1 or 2 pieces that are MLS ready and can come in and make them compete. Or maybe they bring in somebody from another country. You know, they obviously let go of players that had international ties to them, so they might have an international spot open or 2 that they can use to bring a quality center back. Like I said, center back is the primary position that they need to focus on this season. Mm-hmm. You know, I hate to say it because it seems like every year it has to be center back. But I mean, it doesn't matter if we score 5 goals if we keep giving up 6. You know?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I'm going to add to that too. If you think about MLS kind of as a whole, there aren't a lot of teams that have the same starting center back pairing year over year. A lot of teams have the same thing, and again, that comes from the focus by MLS in general, and teams in MLS in general, and general managers and technical directors and coaches. They want to focus on attack. They want to provide entertaining software, and so entertaining football. I don't know where software came from. Entertaining football. And if they want to provide entertaining football, it's going to start and end with the attack. It's not going to be a big focus on center backs, you know, in terms of defenders. You want your outside backs to be really great, but your center backs, okay, whatever. You know, we see occasionally a team like an SKC where, you know, Matt Beasler's been there for 5, 6, 7 seasons, it feels like, and you know, very good player, of course, but it's more the rarity in MLS at this point than the common thread. I do think that we try to make a trade for a good center back in MLS, somebody who's not a player that's coming off a bad season or coming off an injury, but actually making a trade or a play for a real, true stalwart center back, something we desperately need. I think we see that. I think that's what Tab is desiring for his back line, and ties into what Voice is saying there, or Voice TTV, Twitch TV. The only leadership in the back we have is Zarek, and I don't know if we're going to trade for Walker Zimmerman. I would love it, but
I would love it.
You know, go ahead.
But I think you basically take Tomas Martinez's and Victor Cabrera's money, whatever salary they're making, and you invest that money into a center back. You take that and you go look for the center back and you bring them in.
So Tomas was making, Tomas last year was making roughly 384,000.
Yeah, so
that's really not much, by the way, by MLS standards.
That's why I said Tomas and Victor's.
And Victor, I think, was like 250 or something like that. It wasn't much.
You're talking about a 500K.
Yeah. You absolutely are. Yeah.
So I mean, you take that money and you find you a legitimate center back that can hold down fort alongside whoever your next other center back is going to be. Let's hope whatever happened with Kiki was just just kind of tired of the times and just I don't know. Like I said, the whole Kiki thing at the end of the season was just strange. And hopefully it's just a little blimp in his Dynamo career, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. They need to focus a lot of attention to that center back position. So,
and interestingly, Fidel says money talks and Dynamo don't like to spend. Good players cost money. That's a very good point. Kenny says I think Ramirez is going to be trade bait. I think that is spot on, and I think it is the case. Somebody pointed out that Christopher G pointed out we have a lot of forwards to use in a trade. I think that's a very fair statement. But on the flip side of that, we have a lot of forwards, but forwards also mean wingers in this case, outside players. You're talking Mateo Bahamic. He's probably not going to be a center forward. George may correct me on that. George kind of has watched him very closely. Watched him actually in Instituto's last match.
He's out there scoring goals.
Well, I know he played out wide for part of that match, and then he moved to center forward, and I think he scored his goal out wide. So you've got Mateo Bahamic, you've got Ariel Lassiter. That was the other thing I wanted to mention. Ariel Lassiter. We've gone ahead and paid his option, the option to buy on him. So he is officially a Dynamo player now. He's no longer on loan. He is ours. Which I'm not going to lie, I am excited and elated about. He's a player that showed out when he was given a chance. He struggled a little bit towards the end of the season, but let's be fair, the entire team did. So it's kind of tough to judge him on that towards the end of the year, but we will definitely see. Oh, no, Eric, Eric, we encourage promotion of Soccer Matters on this show.
Yeah, I mean, and I was excited about the Ariel Lassiter pickup, obviously. He came out with a bang, with that brace that he had, and then I think he scored 2 more goals after that. But like I said, it takes a while for a player to get comfortable with the system and all that good stuff. And I think he showed there at the end. He was starting to link up a lot better with Quintero and with Morrow, and hopefully that continues. I hope they take this offseason to kind of hang out a little bit and get to understand each other and just gel. I think he's a really, really good, talented player. Obviously, he's a Costa Rican international, another good quality international as far as the soccer world is known for. So, I mean, yeah, man. I mean, let's go.
Absolutely. So I'm going to read through all the rest of these just because it's a lot of players. But Mateo Bahamic, Ariel Lassiter, Nico Lemoyne, Mauro Manotas, obviously, Darwin Quintero, Christian Ramirez, Danny Rios. That is 7 combination wingers / center forwards. And that is, you've got a lot of interchangeable parts there. That's the thing, right? A lot of these are movable pieces that are very versatile and can play across that front line in a lot of different places. And you have a Darwin Quintero that can kind of be that anchor point that can be that link up between all the different moving parts. If I saw those players on my roster as as my forward core, I would be content. Now, again, somebody pointed out with that many forwards, it's likely we see one depart. It's probably going to be Christian Ramirez. That's very accurate. It probably is going to be, and then we probably sign a cheap player, cheap young kid at forward, or Danny Rios maybe gets his opportunity, or I don't know. I guess we see, but I'm down for it. Look, it's Tab's team to make happen, so I'm down for it. Let's see what he does, right?
Yeah, for sure. And see, I mean, and this is why I think they need to focus so much of their attention to the center back position or defense position, because I think the forward position is already kind of there to our cap. I mean, and then we haven't mentioned that they threw out a contract to Nico Hansen to see what happens. Maybe he's another player that gets involved in that.
That's
and that
true
makes
too,
8 players.
Yeah.
And then The fact is, if Nico Hansen does come back, that makes it 8. Obviously, that Christian Ramirez out of those 8 would be the one that's going to be dangled out there for trade bait, and I think he would bring him back a good return. But as far as like who I see right now at this moment as my starting 3 up front, obviously I think it would be Darwin on the left, like he's been playing. Mauro as your 9, even though he's been crap, but I mean he's your number 9. And then it's a battle, and it's a battle between Mateo and Lassiter for that right spot right now at this moment. Now, obviously, we're gonna have to see what Danny Rios, another youth kid, I think he's 17 years old, 18 years old.
17 right now.
So I mean, so he would have to take a huge leap to kind of push some players out. But I mean, hey, if he can do it, power to him. And I would love to see a 17-year-old kid out there balling out for the Dynamo. Trust me, I those who know me, I love to see youthful players out there because they're hungry. They want to go out there and show their worth and attack and do whatever the position is, and they're easier to coach because they want to know, they want to learn, they want to progress. But aside from that, yeah, like I said, it's going to be one of those things where Nico and Daniel are going to be one of those players that are going to have to. One of them probably going to end up going to RGV, if not both. And then depending on what happens with that, and if Christian doesn't get traded or whatever, we'll see what happens with that as well. But yeah, man, I think the forward position is pretty much set up already. I'm at least from my end, I'm not expecting any more players to be brought in for the forward position. So, I mean, but I don't know. Like I said, the only transaction I can see is possibly Christian being traded because he wants more playing time, and he's one of those players that I think he gets paid pretty handsomely compared to for Dynamo standards that he can be moved on.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and I actually think it's less that, because I think the Dynamo would love to keep him as their backup forward. But the problem is when you have a player of his caliber as your backup forward, that is money, and he's not a cheap contract, but that is money that you're spending on a player that as a backup that you could be spending elsewhere, like center back, where you desperately need a better player. Parts unknown, not sure who that actually is, says Rios will be a super sub, maybe have him on the pitch for the last 10 to 15 minutes. Danny, Marcelo, and maybe Nico to a little bit feel like the very likely, like they're going to be the kind of common 3 subs that we see throughout the season in the last 10 to 15 minutes. And it's important to note, this season was a little different, and the reason we kept Nico and Palomino up so much is because this season we had the opportunity to do 5 subs over 3 different sub periods throughout the match, whereas next season we're reverting back to 3 subs throughout the match. So I wish they would have kept the 5 subs. Honestly, I think it made the matches overall a better quality because you were able to sub off your really tired players. But MLS gonna MLS, right?
But I mean, another reason is because you couldn't send those players to RGV because then they would have to quarantine every time they come back.
True too.
And they would take away from them training and practicing and progressing in their careers and all that good stuff. So that's another reason why. But like to just jump on your back about that, super sub thing as far as Danny and Nico and Marcelo. I think Marcelo needs to be at least that, that super sub type of player for us. Coming in this season, because of how highly he's been spoken of, right? Nico, I want him to be on the match day 18. I want him to be pushing for playing time and things of that nature, and obviously be pushing to play more on the pitch and be more effective on the pitch. Danny is one of those kids where like I said once again, I want to reiterate: if Danny does really well and he goes and kills it. As a 17-year-old, fantastic. But I don't know if he's ready for that limelight yet. I hope he proves me wrong. But, I think more likely or not, he's gonna be one of those players that goes to that U23 system or RGV thing. More than likely, which is not a bad thing for a 17-year-old.
Here's what I'm gonna throw out there. I think Tab is one of those coaches that is going to give these kids a genuine preseason opportunity to prove that they deserve a shot. And with the way that Mauro played this past season, And Christian, albeit a decent sub, struggled himself when he had his starts. I think the door's wide open for Danny, and I think Danny might surprise some people. And look, if Daniel comes in and he blows it up in preseason, I will have no problem letting him be the starter, and I will have no problem if he struggles at times, right? Like that's going to happen with a striker. You have to be accepting of that. But what I want to see from Daniel is I want to see a player that buys into what Tab is doing and in such a way that he allows Tab to coach him up. And Tab is the right coach to coach a player up. Go ahead.
I mean, and you want him to understand the formations where he needs to be at, and make sure that the game's not too fast for him at that beginning stage. Because
Absolutely.
it's one thing to be playing in youth team as opposed to first team when you're playing against professionals who are sometimes 20, 30 pounds heavier than you, pushing you around. Especially
he did a Skype call interview more or less, just kind of told his story, but he mentioned that one of the things he knows he needs to work on this offseason is getting thicker and heavier and stronger. He knows that he needs to bulk up.
I mean, I seen him play. I've seen him play out there with the U team, and he's a very light kid. I mean, he needs some muscle. He needs some thickness to him. The same thing goes with Marcelo, but I think Marcelo's a little further along the process with that, and Nico as well. But I think Danny's going to be one of those that, obviously we're going to be looking forward to seeing. And if we have a somewhat of a normal season next season in 2021, I expect to see him in the U.S. Open Cup games for sure. I expect them to see him, maybe during some garbage time minutes as far as, if we're winning big blowouts or whatever. But like I said, if he comes out and balls out during preseason and Tab throws him out there as one of the first off the bench, hey man, that just goes to show the grit and tenacity that Danny had on preseason to show that he's worth the quality to be promoted like that. So,
so real quick before we dive too much deeper into this, Christopher G said we still have to see if Hansen takes the contract. Yes, that's true. However, by offering him a bona fide contract offer, that means that he is ineligible for the MLS re-entry draft. That's important because that means that his opportunities are actually pretty slim. He's not going to hit free agency because we offered him a contract as well. And so if he declines the contract, then he's basically, he theoretically becomes a free agent. Any team is open to approach him to sign. But he loses out on having that free agency period where he kind of has a minimum amount that he can sign for. And with how he played this season, I can't blame him for wanting to get a little bit more money, and wanting to go to a place where maybe he gets to start. But I think if we can get him signed, I think that's a player that honestly we try to trade as well. As much as I love him, trust me, I'm a big Nico Hansen fan. As much as I love him, I think he's the type of player that would do well on another team in an opportunity to start. And I think you can get some allocation money or possibly a draft pick or maybe two, or a bunch of other different asset types from a trade for Hansen. Even though he's not a superstar caliber player, he's good enough to compete on certain teams and push for his starting position.
Hansen has a lot of quality to him. Obviously he did really well when after Albert Elise left. He showed a different aspect of the attack, because obviously we know with Albert he depended a lot on speed, but with Hansen he depended a lot of ball control. But yeah, man, Hansen would be a great pickup, but I think he would fall underneath that same token as far as Christian Ramirez, where you have a lot of players in the same position, even though he can rotate. That's one of the good things about these players that we have in the Forge. There's a lot of players that can play different positions. So, we talk about maybe losing Christian, but who would be our backup, number 9. But like Sean just stated earlier, you have Mateo Bahamic over there training as a 9 in Instituto, playing some time there as a number 9. Danny Rios, if he shows that he's of quality, he can play at number 9 spot. Darwin Quintero, even though he's a little smaller, but he knows how to play at that number 9 spot, if need be. But, so there's players that can play different positions up front that you can move around and swap around and, and show different looks to defenses and all that good stuff. And I think they all play pretty well. So.
Something else that's really important, and this is going to kind of sidetrack the conversation here, but Tomas was still listed. Tomas Morrow were listed as the designated players from last year, the DPs from last season, and one of those is gone in Tomas. So I'm curious to see, because Ariel Lassiter's contract is not going to put him into the DP threshold. So it is going to be very interesting to see what they do with that DP slot, because I guarantee you they use it on someone. Now, whether that DP slot, go ahead.
Well, let's not forget that there's going to be 3 young DP spots available to them next season under that new CBA that they have. So, I mean, I don't know what the age limit is on that. I don't know. I think it's 22. I'm not sure what it is. But so there's different mechanisms coming in that the Dynamo are going to be able to work. But obviously, we know that when it comes to signing DPs, or what we kind of think what DPs should be as far as money wise, Dynamo don't hit nowhere near that. So,
but that's okay, because I think what we need to remember is Tab's area of influence is young players, right? Young players can go for cheaper than a superstar top end talent. So you get a young player that Tab is comfortable with, that Tab's coached before, that's coming in from Europe or coming in from overseas, that is a U.S. Men's national team youth player. And a lot of times when you bring in a player like that, the league is willing to front you a little bit of money to help with that transfer fee. So why do I say that? Because there are some players that have stated that they would love to come to MLS that have been playing overseas were previously U.S. youth national players. Someone had brought up, a player like Johansson, Aaron Johansson overseas. Johansson is not going to be a player that's going to fit for Tab because he's a 30-year-old now. The dude is old. Ledesma, however, that is a player that I would not be shocked to see the Dynamo sneak in as a dark horse candidate to bring in. And I completely agree with you, George. That would be a hell of a signing. Let's not get excited. There's still a lot of things that have to happen before we bring a new player in. But, hey, say what you will. Things happen, man. Things happen. You never know.
It's look. I mean, I love to be optimistic, and be like, hell yeah, a player of that caliber can come to Dynamo because of his, obviously his connection with Tab. But he is doing well at PSV. He is climbing the ranks up there, and by the time he might be too expensive to bring over, because you're talking about maybe a loan, maybe depending on what they're trying to do. But but other than that, I don't know. He's one of those that's a little bit out of reach to me. Yeah, George, yeah, but maybe a loan, but which would be nice. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I think one of the things that we've always needed to do and we've liked doing is creating a relationship with European clubs. Like, hey, send us your young players. We'll train them, whatever. We'll build them up, and then if you still don't have a consistent spot for him later on, or if you can't sell them, hey, we're always a location that we want to buy these players, but still haven't got that connection with a European club. Think about it. Who have we dealt with as far as European clubs to bring in players from? Maybe Kiki
Porto?
with
Porto?
Porto.
I mean, there's been a couple. There's been a couple that we've made from their B teams,
but not on a consistent basis. Look. No. For example, like you see all the players that FC Dallas has sold to Bayern Munich. I think they've sold like 3 players to Bayern Munich.
Yeah, but how many have they acquired from Bayern Munich, right?
But what I'm saying is like there's a relationship being built there. Right now it just seems like it's all Bayern Munich, but I'm sure like if there's a French player on Bayern 2 that's playing in the Bundesliga 3rd division that's they're thinking about, but they want to see more out there, that if that FC Dallas came out there and said, hey, let him come over here, he's going to play 1st division games against grown men, let's see how he does over here. And I think that would be a relationship that builds and blossoms because of the fact that they already have that relationship and that connection because of the players have dealt to them already. So,
and the thing is though, and I think a lot of people tend to forget this, Bayern Munich and FC Dallas just back in the end of 2019 announced that they were partnering in youth development. So it was a situation too when it comes to Bayern Munich buying their players that it was kind of already set up and prepared for them. It was built out that they would do this. So we need to prove that we can, first of all, create players from our academy system that are good enough to continue playing and are of a caliber and a level to play overseas. And then once we've done that, and that way we can develop them enough that they're ready to do that, there will be teams that will come knocking. Look, there are players across MLS
Sure.
right now that are being coveted by a number of European teams. It is clear Europe is now scouting MLS and scouting MLS youth and young players very heavily. Brendan, oh God, I can't remember his last name now, from Philly, who, he played this year. He was a starter for them, and he's already, pegged to go overseas in this offseason. So, again,
Salzburg.
yeah, Salzburg. So there are plenty of opportunities if the Dynamo can find players to continue to progress and develop and improve. Memo, unfortunately, for everything that he is, he's not a top end talent player. He's not a player, even in his young days, that was a top level prospect. We needed players like Lucatero, Brian Salazar, your other players that had all the talent in the world and then threw it away because they felt that another opportunity was better for them. Look, the Dynamo created, and I'm going to go on a rant here, but the Dynamo created this frustration essentially by younger players with the system because they refuse to create opportunities for young players. With Tab here, that helps kind of close that gap a little bit and creates opportunities for young players. So I think we see, and that's why you see so many of these younger homegrown players signing now. It's not just because our academy's gotten better. It's because now you have a guy like Tab here that is known for developing young talent, and a guy who has made it clear, not only visibly being at academy practices every once in a while in academy matches and academy tournaments, but he's taking the time to learn about these kids, which means Tab is fully invested in the club concept, in the club, that kind of whole thing. And so we've not had that. Every coach we've had before Tab has not been about building between the academy and the senior team. It's always been about the senior team first, and that's all that matters. When it comes to Tab, he understands that he is here because we need to build that bridge and fill that gap, so to speak. So I know what you're saying, but I also want to remind people, and I know this is positivity, so bear with me, but I know for a fact that with Tab here, there are more clubs watching very closely to see this next season and the season after this. If Tab develops even one player that ends up going overseas to Europe in the next 2 seasons, I guarantee you the Dynamo form a partnership with some team overseas. Until that happens, I agree with you, but that's not to say we can't buy talent from overseas as it is. So
No, and that's not what I'm saying. I mean, because like George mentions in the chat, we love Olympia, which obviously that that's like our farm system or whatever. And but the difference between that is that when we buy players from Olympia, we're buying already established players for them. Boniak, Romel Kyoto, Alex Lopez, players like that. We're not buying youthful, young, up and coming players from them, which is I think something that we need to focus on more. And we're gonna go out to foreign grounds to buy players. You see like LAFC and their partnership with Peñarol from Uruguay. They got Diego Rossi from that. They got Brian Rodriguez from that, or Brian Fernandez from that, from those deals. And those two guys are about to be flipped for tens of millions of dollars in European transfer money. It's things where I know for the while we've been saying this for a long while that the Dynamo have fallen behind in the backseat. We know with the whole academy thing, and obviously we're trying to catch up and get ground with the fact that we hired Paul Hosger and got Tab in here to overlook these things. And I think we're progressing towards that, having a respectable youth academy, whatever, and hopefully it produces players that can, get on the pitch for the Dynamo and then, be sold, or even if they produce beautiful players that European clubs see and they want to invest in them, that's great too. But that's all I'm saying, man, that I think that we still need to create that bond with a team, a perennial powerhouse team, hopefully that can help us along with this development of players.
Just keep breathing
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm writing a tweet. Oh, and my mic just went upside down on me. That was great. I'm just writing a tweet. Let me finish the tweet. Hold on. Hashtag
Yeah,
hold it down.
for sure.
And the link to the show. By the way, if you're on Twitter, make sure you follow us at Gen Orange Radio. I can talk.
But we're talking about all these young players, but we failed to mention Juan Castillas in the midfield because we haven't really touched on the midfield because I think our midfield we basically touched on everybody else on there, which is right now Darwin, Marcelo, Memo, and Matias. But Juan Castillas is a 15, 16-year-old that Tab has looked very into. I think he has a lot of potential. Like I said, I don't know if he's gonna make the first team this season, but it's good to see that players of that age are being given the opportunity. He signed his professional contract, so he is a Dynamo player. So we'll see how he goes, but I'm pretty sure that he's another one that needs to obviously work on his physical because as a 16-year-old kid, I can't really think of him being too overpowering or anything like that. But like I said, there's been cases where kids, 16, 17-year-old kids can deal with the fact that they're playing against grown men, and maybe we can have one of those here pretty soon.
Well, and I agree with you on the midfield, especially when it comes to Juan Castilla, because he's a player that in another season or two, I think, he's going to be a player that's going to be, in my opinion, at RGV. But I say that, and Tab could surprise us. He's another player that who knows what he's going to do in the preseason. I don't want to put that pressure on him, but I think that he has an opportunity. Tab's going to give it to him, and what if? I mean, everybody else, it seems like in the league has a 15, 16-year-old playing. Why not us? I mean, we shy away from it because, he's a little young, he's a little small. But, sometimes that's what you have when you have young players like that. And the only way they get better is by playing that top talent. You never know. Just saying, you never know. But George says Juan Castilla is a number 10. They're talking in chat. I want to throw this out there. They're talking in chat about the various academies and local teams, the local club teams here in the Houston area, and how good they are at developing youth, but how the Dynamo haven't leveraged that. And I want to add the caveat: haven't leveraged that as far as we know to date. I think there has been some connection there, but I also think that honestly, for all that I appreciated out of James Clarkson as the director of the academy, I do feel like he was a miss when it came to connecting with the local club teams. I feel like we missed a ton of talent and have missed a ton of talent coming out of those club teams. And let's be fair, kids, young kids that were 15, 16, 17 years old coming out of their out of the different local club teams, their first place that they were looking even 2 or 3 years ago was FC Dallas. They're, looking to go there. And frankly, FC Dallas had no problem poaching players from here in the Houston area. I think that's starting to change a little bit. We're starting to see more kids in this area that are sticking around. And I think that bodes well. Again, unfortunately, those types of things are not immediate factors. They're not things you're going to see in 1 season or 2 seasons. It's going to be a 3 to 5 season turnaround time. I've been talking about 5 seasons for 2 seasons now. We got 3 more seasons, guys. Just bear with me. I promise it's going to happen. Go ahead.
Let me throw a caveat out there that I think would help propel this a lot quicker. Because I have a lot of friends that have their kids in youth soccer, all these different academy, all these different clubs or whatever. Dynamo is a professional team here in our city, Houston. They need to promote themselves as the legit, the formal, the main youth academy in this city, in the city of Houston and surrounding areas. They need to go out there and showcase why they should be the ones that you're basically tossing your kids to, because all these other club teams that are around there, and no disrespect to none of them, because a lot of them do great jobs in developing kids, and they go on to garner scholarship for kids, and some of them go on to play professional soccer and all that good stuff. So no disrespect to any of them, but like the fact that the Dynamo haven't come up with a form of, hey, you know what? Let's bring these kids in. We're gonna pay for this and this and that. The fact that there's a lot of kids out there that can't pay for club soccer. A lot of talented kids out there that are in in bad situations financially with their families or their immigrants or whatever that can be brought in, and they have a lot of talent, but they don't have the funds or means to go do that. And this being the professional club, you should be able to welcome those players in. Have a meet out there. They know the locations. They know the high-end locations. Whether it be in the Southwest, whether it be in Acres Homes or whatever, or wherever you go to those parts, you do free sessions, free training sessions, and you go out there. You send your coaches out there, and you look at these kids play, and you see if you can pick out a diamond in the rough, a diamond or two in the rough. Until they do that, man. These parents or whatever, they are paying these other clubs to put their kids in there to help them develop and all this stuff. They're going to continue paying and going to these clubs because they see results. They see that type of thing. Until these results start coming out of the Dynamo Academy, you're not gonna see the top level kids in the Houston and surrounding areas come to the Dynamo Academy. So they need to do something to promote themselves ahead of these established organizations of youth soccer that's around here in Houston.
Agreed 100%. And again, a lot of that falls on the previous regime. A lot of that falls on the way the Dynamo were run previously. It is clear that the Dynamo, and they've been working on this. They've been working to improve this. Not just the academy, but the senior team. They need to form that bond with not only the players, but also the club teams themselves here in the city of Houston. And it needs to become, a place where kids, this is what they aspire to do. This is where they aspire to go to. And look, that starts when you connect with players, that are, what was it? Yates High School that you had, who was it? God, Trey the Truth, and the Dynamo went out there and they donated tons of soccer equipment, goals, in conjunction with Bump Box, and who else was it? Bump Box and somebody else.
Yeah.
But
that's great, Sean.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but I mean, you have to start creating that. You have to start creating that connection. And trust me, the Dynamo have been reaching out to those academy or the clubs and the academies in the local area, trying to build those types of rapport too. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I've kind of been hesitant to talk about this. A lot of your local club directors have had it out for the Dynamo since the Dynamo came in, because the Dynamo started poaching their players years ago, and those clubs didn't like it. Those clubs hated that. Because they never gave the club any recognition for it. It was never about that. In the last few seasons, we started to see that change. But the problem is when you do that, that creates a tension and that creates a negative effect. And that is going to carry over to the players, because the director is going to tell the coaches. He's going to make sure the coaches are aware. They're going to make sure the coaches are aware. Hey, look, if the Dynamo get a scout out here, just tell them they're not allowed, or, whatever. Don't let that player practice even, whatever it is. Trust me, I know that sounds crazy, but directors do that. And I think there's a lot of political bad will. As much as you can build up political goodwill, you can build up political bad will. I think the Dynamo built up so much that it's been very difficult for Paul Holliker to overcome a lot of that. He's working on it. Trust me, he's working his tail off to overcome it. But it's not something that's going to overcome overnight. We're seeing improvements, but it's not 100% there yet. Go ahead.
But you know what I'm saying? Okay, but before I hit that, going back to the Yates deal with the soccer team, that's great. Like I said, Fidel, who's one of the guys that's on the chat here, he coaches at Wisdom High School, which used to be Lee High School here in the Southwest area. And the Dynamo did something with him a couple of years back, which is great. It's great to see them do stuff for the local soccer teams, especially in the schools and stuff like that. But club soccer and school soccer are two different things. You can't really partake in both at the same time, because it's a lot. It's a lot, really. But as far as going back to the thing about the poaching of players in the beginning and the Dynamo catching a bad rep from that, yeah, I understand that completely. And it might have been stepping on people's toes and things of that nature. But like I said, I think when they were doing that, they were trying to push out to the show like, hey, we're the professional soccer team here. So we're the name brand. So the best players should be coming to this academy, which understandably so. It should be that way, but it's not. But obviously we're into 2020 and it's not that way, right? So in my opinion, why not give out 20 to 30 free entries to 20 or 30 players that you think deserve to come in here, that that are worth of the skill level that you think to make the academies, that can pay. Or it's a way of showing that, hey, instead of the parents having to pay X amount of dollars to go play at so and so youth club, you can bring your player over here and have him train under professional coaches and stuff like that for the professional team in Houston free.
They do. They have scholarships that are given out for young players. Not the U17 team, it's U15s and below. I actually looked this up a month or two ago. Somebody was talking about it in the Surge chat. But yeah, there are scholarships. There's a number of scholarships that are available for players, and those scholarships cover the registration fees. They cover the league fees. They cover they cover some of the travel expenses, not all of it, but it's a pretty substantial amount that they cover. And
that's good.
Yeah, I'm just letting you know, because I know some people get heated about it, and it's like, I know y'all don't know about it, but it's there. That's what they're trying to do. So the reason I brought up the ill will, if you will, between the academies, between the clubs and the academy, is what that did. We also have to remember FC Dallas had a presence here for well before when the Dynamo moved here. So the Dynamo were already fighting the uphill battle. And then they came in, and you're right, they tried to be that big kid on the block, so to speak. But there was a lack of respect in how they did it. And I'm going to call it out because I know firsthand some of the stuff that happened because I've heard stories. There was a lack of respect in how they did it. They said, look, we're the Dynamo, players are going to come to us. It wasn't, and I get that, but I think there also needed to be, hey, look, we respect the fact that you've helped develop this player. We're interested in bringing that player in and letting that player grow in our academy. We want to be part of his or her growth, and we're going to make sure that it's clear when he grows up to be a Dynamo professional player that he came from your club system. Really build that relationship. Instead, it was once he's a Dynamo Academy player, he's a Dynamo player. What he did before, that don't matter. You see it. You see the difference, right? You look at a Memo. They're talking now. He wasn't talking about his time with the Houston Dynamos before. Now he's talking about it. Now it's coming out there. It's part of his interviews. He talks about it. He talks it up. He loves that. And
no, well, the fact is too that there's been a lot of situations for those who follow the U.S. national team players like Pulisic and McKinney and stuff. Those big players that are making out there, and how their youth clubs haven't been compensated for the fact that they took them to a certain level, and under FIFA rules, the youth clubs need to be compensated an X amount of dollars every time they get transferred or whatever kind of deal is done with them or whatever. And I understand from a financial standpoint, that's why these clubs and youth teams and organizations, they want the recognition, because if X player makes it out and ends up being transferred to Barcelona and he does big things out there, they want the recognition. It brings a lot more recognition to their organization, and obviously more players to their organization, and money and all that good stuff that's needed to run X organization, So I understand it.
Yeah, I just want to add something to that too. We're talking about the Dynamo Academy and not producing these players and so on and so forth. FC Dallas has only really sent 2 or 3 players so far overseas. It's not like they've been sending players overseas for the last 10 years and these players have been, standouts overseas, or, they created Pulisic or whatever. Look, we've had one big name player that came from close to the Houston area in Clint Dempsey. And it's as much a failure on the Dynamo's part as it is the local clubs and academies. Look, I'm going to call them out. You haven't had a player that's made it big time, and yet you want to play and act like you are big time. Maybe it's time to realize and own up to the fact that you need help and that you aren't able to produce those professional players. Now, granted, your professional players, we're talking one in a few million, but the amount of talent in the Houston area should have produced something by now. And as much as we want to place the blame on the Houston Dynamo Academy system for failing, the Houston Dynamo for failing, as much as we want to place it on that, there haven't been any players from the Houston area after the Dynamo, outside of the Dynamo, that have competed at the MLS level. So maybe there is something to that more than just anything else. Maybe there's a lack of development outside of that. Dynamo had Breck Shea before FC Dallas drafted him. You're right. He was in the system. But that's, again, that's one player, there are so many things I struggle with when it comes to the academy. Now we're starting to see the benefit of it. We're starting to see the production out of it. And I think as long as that pipeline continues to grow and that pipeline continues to become stronger, I think we'll see more and more players finding this as their opportunity. And the more that the Dynamo pour into that instead of shying away from it, I think it can be the way forward, and it can be the way that allows us. I mean, let me count here for you. So we got let's use Eric McHugh. We've got Juan Castilla. We've got Memo Rodriguez technically. We've got Marcelo Palomino. We've got Nico Lemoyne. We've got Danny Rios. All of those players are coming out of your academy system. And that's nearly a third, maybe even more than a third, of the players that you have currently signed to contracts for the 2021 season. I mean, that's a pretty stark number compared to, this is the first year we've had more than one player, it feels like. Well, I guess technically last year, but it feels like it's the first year we've had more than one player that's been signed to a homegrown contract going into a season. And, at least the last two. But it again, Tab is a big part of that too. And I don't think that last year was fair to him, because it's just one of those things that you're talking about a coach that's coming into a season ready to roll, ready to, build on things. And then the very second week you're playing, you're done. And you've got to wait 6 months or 3 months. It was like 3 months, 3 months before you get to play again. And at that point, players weren't able to practice for at least a month in that time. I mean, that's just killer. In the middle of your season. I mean, that's like a player going down with an injury. It takes time for players to come back from an injury. It takes time for players to get back that fitness. And I say all that just to pretty much say that I think 2021 is going to be a much better indication of what Tab is trying to do and trying to instill in this team than 2021 or 2020 was going to be.
Oh yeah, and I totally agree with you, man. I understand, but see, I think this youth movement, this youth progression, in fact, the overhaul and bringing this youthness to the team is long overdue. I think we shied away from the fact that, like you said earlier, I think because we think they're teenagers still, quote unquote, that they can't do anything for us as far as players on the first team level. And I think that's absurd because, you see in global soccer, 16, 17-year-olds doing great things. Ansu Fati, Giovanni Reina, Alfonso Davies. We see all those players are under 20 years old and they're doing great things, and the biggest of the biggest leagues.
Yeah.
Why can't a 17-year-old do it in MLS?
Well, and you're starting to see it, right? I don't think you're going to see. Okay, here's the other caveat to that. You're not going to see a 17 or 18-year-old that's going to take the league by storm. What you're going to see is a 17, 18-year-old that is good enough to start for his team, and he's going to be a player that's a top 10 or a top 15 player in the league, and then he's going to go overseas after one season of being that good, because he's going to get an offer that you simply can't refuse, as the team that the team that he's with, and as the player. And frankly, that's exactly how it should be right now in MLS. You're not going to have. Genuinely, I don't want these academy players for more than the next 3 seasons. If they're here for more than 3 seasons, if they're playing on the Dynamo for more than 3 seasons, then we failed to develop the player and they need to move on. Because we're going to need those slots for somebody else. Go ahead.
2 players of example of that happening, what you're talking about, is Richard's kid from FC Dallas, the kid that replaced Reggie Cannon when he went to Boa Vista. Juventus is reportedly coming in with a $7 million bid to buy him, and he's only played half a season, half a COVID season as their starting left fullback. So obviously that shows. Adam Clark from New York Red Bulls, a 17-year-old who just popped off the scene. Because obviously I didn't know anything about him. I doubt you knew anything about him, Sean, before him bursting on the scene for the Red Bulls. But he got an opportunity and he started scoring goals left and right. And he showed that he can play on the first team. And he's upon another player that's going to be on here pretty soon.
Yeah, Brendan Aronson was the player I mentioned earlier from the Philadelphia Union. Same type of situation, same exact situation. Look, I mean, we can say that with these kids that are coming up, they're the future of the Dynamo. I'm not exactly sure that's what we need to be hyping them as. My hope is they're the future of freaking global football. Let's be real. That's my goal, right? That's what I want them to become. And I think, I think we need to be careful to not get too attached to these players. And that sounds really crazy because I'm sitting here hyping these Dynamo Academy players like, hell yeah, let's go, let's go. That's what we need to do. But until we can sell those players on, we're not going to have the money to bring in the big name players that everybody wants to begin with. We got to sell them on first.
Think about it. It's a rare few that start from the youth academy and go their whole career with that club, right? Regardless of league. You take somebody like, for example, Diego Maradona, who just passed away this last week. Rest in peace to him, obviously, and our condolences to his family. But he was outed from 15 years old. When he was in Argentina Juniors, and he went to the big club in Argentina, Boca Juniors, and he only lasted 1 year there before Barcelona came in and bought him as a 17, 18-year-old. Yeah. And then he went to Barcelona and played over there for 3 years, and then injuries or whatever. But then he went to Napoli. The thing here is that I don't want these players to be playing for us, these young group players to be playing with us more than a year or two if they're that legit of a talent. And you take a club like Ajax, for example. Most players, they only stay there a year or two, and then you have the heavyweights of European soccer come knocking the door trying to take everybody away. They had like a purge a year or two ago where Dejan got taken, Delet got taken, I can't remember his goalkeeper got taken, whatever. Yeah. And the other players, Van der Beek got taken, They get rated, and they consume with the same process because they understand that even though Ajax is a big club, they're not the biggest of the big, and their role in global soccer is to develop players, have them on the first team, progress them up their levels, sell them on. Circle of life.
So Kenny says, so if we don't, and this is a good question to kind of round out this discussion. So if we don't want these players here that long, then how do we establish consistent success for the Dynamo, i.e. playoffs most years? I think it. Oh, go ahead. I know you want to talk about it. I can see you ready to talk about it.
So these players that we do play for a while, I mean, obviously if they're talented enough, they really bring a high level of quality of talent, right? So that already improves your team level. But then as an ownership, they have to sprinkle in and bring in, players of quality to around them because these are still young kids. So you need to bring veteran players of quality that play to their level at least, or if not bigger, because they're older veteran players, right? So when you have that, you have a winning team. You have a winning team. But the thing here is that the Dynamo have yet to have youthful players of impact. Then secondly, the Dynamo don't bring in players of high quality to be leaders and show these kids how to be professionals and all this other stuff. So we're doing two things that are not working. We're not doing the two things necessary to build a winning foundation of the team. So as far as having consistent, success, I know everybody's in love with having a Dynamo legend. The whole Brian Ching and the Brad Davises and the Boniek Garcias. But like I said, only a very few players become legends, quote unquote, to their teams. But trust me, I think Dwayne De Rosario is as much of a legend for the Dynamo as X, Y, and Z, because I mean, even though his tenure here was shortened than Brian Ching's or Brad Davis's or Boniek Garcia's, he did a lot in that few years that he was here with us. I don't think anybody here would argue that Dwayne De Rosario isn't a legend.
He's definitely a legend.
Exactly. But he left us. He wanted to go play in Canada.
To go back and play in Canada.
Yeah. So I mean, the legend part has nothing to do with how many years you've played here. If you have a player who's played here for 10 of our suckiest years, you think he's a legend? No. I mean, you mean
Boniek Garcia? I mean, what? I didn't say that out loud, did I?
Yeah, made to some finals. He got the U.S. Open Cup, So he has so luckily for him, he has a little bit of
boy, you are stretching and reaching, my friend. You are reaching, my friend.
he was with us for the MLS finals, the last one that we were in. So, I mean, but like, say for example, like Memo, look, for example, with all respect to Memo, everybody's so enamored with Memo and loves Memo, and yeah, I love him too, whatever. But he's only had one season where he was on a winning squad, and he wasn't even a big part of that squad in 2017.
Yep.
So Memo stays with the Dynamo for 12 years. Why consider him a Dynamo legend if nothing happened in those 12 years? Not really. I don't. That's kind of it's a lackluster career to me if you tell me honestly.
I agree with you. That was why I was pointing out earlier that very few players, you mentioned it. Very few players in the league have played with the same team. Look, SKC are kind of a different example. They, Beasler and Graham Zusi. But if you look at the young players that are coming up through their ranks, those young players don't stay playing for them after they start playing for them. They move on now. That MLS 2.0 was about having young players that stayed and played for your club. Now MLS, like whatever we are on, 6.0 maybe 7.0, I've lost track. Whatever number we're at, version of MLS. This version of MLS is about developing a player for 2 or 3 seasons once he's out of your academy, and then selling him on to a club in Europe or trading him away to another club and getting assets back to sign a better player. Not necessarily a better player, but sign a player that has a proven record. Memo Rodriguez is one of those players that he was never going to be that overseas sensation. He was never going to be that player to compete at that level overseas. He just wasn't that talented. Look, he's plenty talented for MLS play, but get him outside of MLS and another league overseas, and frankly, he would be the 3rd or 4th player off the bench. And that's nothing against Memo. I love the guy. I think it's great that he's playing for the Dynamo, and he's helped instill that tradition and that respect for the club that was missing prior to him, becoming that homegrown player. But coming out of the academy, he was not that prospect that teams were looking at and going, "Oh God, that's not a player we want to play against."
Oh, and you're gonna have players like that, and that's okay. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like I said, going back to the Ajax example, you have a player like John Huntler who he did get an opportunity to go to the clubs, but he didn't do as well as he did when he was with Ajax. Came back to Ajax and played and is playing his whole career until he retires with Ajax, right? So you have players of that caliber who do have talent, but they're not that high quality talent. They're going to move on to bigger and better things and better pastures. But it's okay. We're not saying that that it's not that he's not worth quality or whatever. But what I'm saying is what you do during that time period with that club determines whether or not you become a legend at that club.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I just want to throw this out there from chat. Music Buddha, thanks for the follow earlier, says, "I'm not looking for legends. I want a championship caliber squad. If you win the MLS Cup, you are automatically an H-Town hero." I mean, that's fair, but the thing is you look across MLS and there's very few clubs that you would consider to be championship caliber squads. And the reason I point that out, the only team that is still in the playoffs right now that has any say that they deserve to be the best team labeled in MLS is Seattle. You get away from Seattle and the rest of the teams that are left in the playoffs is confusing at best. At best. Nobody was pegging New England Revolution to be at the stage that they're in the playoffs. Nobody. Not even the pundits and the analysts were pegging them. Go ahead.
I think to what Music Buddhist is saying on the chat, and correct me, Music, if I'm misspeaking for you. Like, say for example, we bring up the Seattle Sounders, example, which to me personally, and I mentioned this on Twitter. I think I replied to Glenn and I said, Seattle Sounders by far are the cream of the crop to MLS. I know people say LA Galaxy or whatever, but no, the last 11 years of what Seattle have done, they're the cream of the crop.
They are absolutely 100% agreed.
But going back to that, so Seattle Sounders have had history, right? So you have like Clint Dempsey to come in and he plays 4 seasons with them. They win a U.S. Open Cup and they win a MLS Cup with him and they go to 2 finals. So yeah, he's a club legend. He's done some things in that 4 years. Then you have this variation of Seattle Sounders where you have players like Nicolas Ladero and Raul Rodriguez, who's about to take them to their who hopefully takes them to their next final and their 3rd cup. That would make 2 MLS Cups under that tenure. Then yeah, they've already played 4 seasons together in Seattle. Yeah, those are legends. But when you have teams like Dynamo, for example, even though we've had Albert Elise for 4 years, do I consider him a club legend? No, I don't.
No,
Even though
not at all.
even though he's top 5 in scoring in our club, top 5 in assists, things of that nature statistically, and I guess he would be there, but he didn't. There was nothing done during his time period here. The U.S. Open Cup is nice. Don't get me wrong, but when that's your level of standard for a legend to win your cup title, that's pretty weak, man. We need to start up in this bar. You see Seattle Sounders, the 10 years they have 2 MLS Cups, 4 U.S. Open Cups. They're constantly fighting it out in Champions League. They're constantly bringing in players of quality into their squad to make sure their squad is still top or somewhere near the top to compete for MLS Cups and all these competitions they're playing in. Let's up the level, guys. Let's up the level. Let's not be afraid to reach for the stars.
You bring up Clint Dempsey. You want to mute your speakers because I'm hearing myself come through, bro. Don't mute me. Just turn them down. Thank you. You bring up Seattle, and I think it's important to remember that the reason Seattle is as good as they are and for as long as they've been is because of their academy. They are producing players every season that are starters. They are producing players that are going overseas as well. They're producing players, but here's the kicker with Seattle. The number of players that they're producing is very high. The number of players that they're producing on an elite level is not so high. And that is the difference. And so they are the team that is keeping a lot of their players. They're not selling a whole lot of them on, right? They're keeping some of their players and not selling them on, but they can afford to do that. But what they're doing is they have 1 or 2 players that are their key playmakers. Ladero is my specific example for this, and Rui Diaz. And those are their 2 DPs. And, frankly, they don't need anybody else. Everybody that's come up has been built around them. And those are the 2 players that have taken it and pushed them forward. And let's not sugarcoat it either. They have a fantastic coach that knows what he's doing, and Siggy Schmid, who knew exactly what he was doing, and that helps tremendously as well.
But the thing is, like, and I love that you mentioned the fact that they do produce from their academy, and like I said prior, they're producing from their academy, and then they're bringing high quality level players to take them to over the top. Nicolas Ladero, Uruguayan full international, who's a regular for Uruguay. Rory Rodiz, who's the starting number 9 for Peru, quality. When you want to be taken seriously at a certain level, you have to bring players that at that level that you want to be represented in. And we haven't done that, unfortunately. We keep looking for cheap buys that we hope grow. That's fine. There's nothing against that. But there comes a time where if you ever want to be taken to a higher level or be done to a higher level, because the thing is, take Albert Elise, for example. He's one of those players that we bought cheaply, and he turned out to be a massive talent that got sold on, right? But the thing with that is we were too gun shy to sell him on for bigger money that we ended up getting no money back, because we don't hit on those too often. We don't hit on those diamonds in the rough too often to continue that process. That's not a process that I would. It's not a established successful process for you to do, because then why not just spend the money to look for the youth academies, the youth players in your own backyard instead of looking them for in other countries, So, but that's neither here nor there. I think we're going too far off topic with the whole youths and all this other stuff. But I don't know what you want to go on to, Sean, or what do you have lined up for us next?
Absolutely nothing. The whole entire intent of tonight was going to be talking about contracts and player options and things like that. I'm curious. Are there? You kind of mentioned it before. Are there any players in MLS that you'd be interested in trying to bring in? I mean, we've seen a couple players mentioned in chat. This is thrown out to you as well. I know Gianluca Busio is one that was offered. I'm curious. Anybody else that you'd be interested in looking at from another club? I saw another one from Vancouver. I don't remember who it was. That name was a little long for me to pronounce.
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't really seen all the players that have been made available by all the clubs, so I can't really say. But from the teams that I have seen, the one player that I've seen that might be of interest that I think would be very good for the Dynamo to bring in. But then again, he plays a position where I think we're fully stacked on. Would be Andrew Carlson from Atlanta United. I mean, he has experience with Tab in the U20s and in the U.S. youth camps and all that stuff, so he would be a great player to bring in. I don't think he would cost that much at all. And another thing that the fans don't know, or probably do know, because I know we have smart fans out there, is that we do hold the number 2 spot in the some kind of draft where he's going to be available in. I think since he's the only one who holds the number 1 spot, that would be, who would be able to pick him ahead of us. But yeah, I think he would be the only.
That's not true. There's 2, because Austin FC coming in 2021 means that there's going to be another team.
No, they fall to the back. They're in the back. They're first in the expansion and the regular super draft and all the other stuff. But when it comes to this other, I forgot what the name of this draft is.
Allocation order. It's not a draft. It's allocation order.
Allocation order. They're in the bottom. I looked it up like last week. I know what I'm talking about. So, but
that's because they've already used it. That's why, because they already used their slot. They've used it.
Probably for some reason. I don't know, because they've only signed 2 players, and they're 2 Paraguayans. So I don't know. Who knows? But regardless, yeah, only since he could pick him up. But yeah, I think Andrew Carlton was one of the players I've seen out there. I'm gonna look up the other players from the other teams to see what kind of players are involved. Maybe next time we get on the show we can talk about a few players or whatever. But yeah, that's the only player I've seen, to be honest, that intrigued me a little bit. I know there was a lot of hype behind him when he was with Atlanta United, when he was up and coming. But unfortunately for him, he played for a team that brought in a lot of players, big players that played his spot. So he was unable to, crack the first team because there was a lot of high-level quality players over there.
Yeah, so Parts Unknown asked, I like the new format that FIFA made for the Club World Cup. What are your opinions, thoughts on it? Offering it to both of us to with that question. What are your thoughts on the changes that FIFA made for Club World Cup? Is it more beneficial to clubs now?
Well, first and foremost, before we get to Club World Cup, as far like this is a Dynamo show and this is obviously MLS based, I want to see the MLS win a Champions League first, so it's one of the things. So I kind of feel like it's kind of like obviously FIFA's, when anything involved FIFA is about money. So they expanded it because they want more money involved in this tournament, which should be a more prestige tournament than what it is really. Kind of feels like it's just kind of thrown in there in December on a regular year, where the big clubs that won their regions and the club championships or whatever go to Japan or some country or whatever who pays the most, and they play a tournament real quick, and there's a winner who usually the European team or the South American team. But anyways, they expanded it, because obviously they want other teams involved, countries involved, and plus I think they want MLS. Not that they specifically targeted MLS to be involved in it, but they know if an MLS team is there, that's more money coming in, because say for example like LAFC, now they're qualified to go to Club World Cup for whatever reason, for seeding purposes. You know that those supporters are gonna go travel to wherever, be there. LAFC is gonna sponsor some of that stuff. They're gonna have sponsorships with their organizations to get those supporters out there. So there's more money going into this competition. But yeah, man, I don't see nothing wrong with it. I mean, like I said, this is just another tournament that I think FIFA's trying to get more money off of us, which I think they should, because I mean, if you're talking about anything with the World Cup at the end, it should be a much bigger hype than what it is currently, to be honest. I don't think it ever gets to the level of a Champions League, but we'll see, man. I mean, if more big clubs are involved with it, it can be. So we'll see.
I don't really have an opinion either way. I'd love to say, it's going to benefit the clubs more. Clubs will put more effort into it. I don't know if that's going to happen. It's yet another competition that clubs that are already very stretched thin are going to have to juggle. And while yes, it's still technically a prestigious competition, I just think it's one of those competitions where you're going to have the same clubs that are going to be winning it year over year. It's going to be your. Go ahead.
It's basically the Federation Cup for the clubs because like Europe, the Champions League is the Champions League, right? That's like bar none, like the biggest tournament ever. South America, in Mexico, when they were able to play in it, the Copa Libertadores that's big. That's big time. That's big time soccer right there. Like I said, the Club World Cup, the way it's done right now, like I said, it just seems like just thrown in there. Just like, hey, let's pit all the winners of the big tournaments around the region and let's see who wins it. But obviously, because we know that European clubs are the ones that spend the way most, 9 times out of 10, they're the ones winning that Club World Cup. So it's really no big deal. It's just another trophy on the mantle for wherever the Champions League winner is. Like Nestor said, you ask a Liverpool fan, and it's the biggest trophy ever. Yeah, but Liverpool hasn't won anything of significance up until recently. So it's for them right now. They're in seventh heaven or whatever because they're winning everything right now. But I mean, you take a club like when the few times when a South American club wins it, it's a big deal for them. Yeah, because they just beat a big European team across the pond, with quarter of the salary that they're using. So it is a big accomplishment to the other regions. I don't think that's so big for European clubs. I think the Champions League is bar none the biggest trophy out there aside from the World Cup that you can ever lift up.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, we've talked about it. I agreed with you. It is prestigious. Like I said, I still think it's going to be the same teams competing for it year over year. It's just how it always ends up going.
Bring in the chat, Sean, and a lot of people are mentioning a lot of players, which is great because, like I said, I haven't really taken the time to look at it. But like from the players that I've seen, they're naming off a lot of like forward players. I think I see Zalama, which I know from
he's a midfielder. He can play as a midfielder out wide too. So yeah, he's a winger, but.
And JJ Williams, I think he's a forward for Atlanta United or whatever. I'm not too sure. I think that's the same JJ Williams I'm thinking of. But yeah, man. But like I said, if you look at our roster currently, I mean, we need help midfield and defensive. So I think that's where they're going to be looking for. So I mean, like I said, I'm gonna take some time and I'm gonna look at the players that are available from other clubs that have just been released. And maybe next time we do a show, maybe I can toss out 2 or 3 names from the defensive and midfield positions that might be of intrigue. But yeah, I don't think we're going to be looking too much into forwards, man. Guys, I'm sorry. It's just as much as I know y'all want to see the Dynamo score 5-6 goals a game, but we need to stop letting people score on us 5 or 6, 7 times in a game. So,
So I want to go back to something real quick. You said that Austin are not going to be top of the allocation order. The reason why, when you check the allocation order, they weren't at the top of the list is because the list has not updated yet. And the last time the list was updated was in July of this year. They will, in fact, have the top allocation order slot for 2021. I've confirmed it. But that's still only going to be 2 or 3 teams, which is not that many. There are enough players that are linked with Austin and otherwise. I would not be surprised if Austin tries to sell the slot, to be totally honest with you, because there's not, the youngest player right now, or the player that they would probably be most interested in on that allocation order list that's said that he's willing to come to MLS is DeAndre Yedlin. And even then, I'm not sure that he's worth bringing in at this point. Yeah, he's super fast, but outside of that, I'm not sure he brings a whole lot, honestly.
The thing with DeAndre Yedlin, the thing is like, I don't know if you saw there was a tweet out there that kind of showed what an average player was making per league, and I think MLS finally cracked, like, maybe, I don't know if they cracked top 10, but they finally cracked pretty significant amount. I think they were above like La Liga 2 and Bundesliga 2 and stuff like that, but they were still a little ways off in the championship. Which, if I'm DeAndre Yedlin, I mean, I wouldn't mind playing the championship. I'm still in England. I'm still living where I'm living, and still playing high quality football. So it's kind of hard to kind of bring a player like that back because second division over there still pays fairly well as opposed to the first division here. Now, if he just wants to come home because he wants to come home, then that's something else. But then you have to work that out, as far as contract, and make sure that you're not overpaying for a fullback. Like I said, as much as I love Marcus Beasley and what he did for the Dynamo and all that, I don't think I would ever put a DP. I'll hope the Dynamo will never buy a DP back again. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed. Outside backs at DP levels are a dime a dozen, and not a dime a dozen. They're diamond in the rough. You're not going to find many, and when you do, good luck. Hope they're going to be good enough. You know, I kind of want to wrap this up. We're about to hit the 9 o'clock hour. I'm actually kind of shocked that we went almost a full 2 hours just talking about it. But I do want to kind of wrap this up, and I want to kind of, close it out with some thoughts on some different things. But, there are players out there that and Tab said on Glenn's show that he's looking within MLS, which tells me, if he has a player from overseas that he's interested in, he's already shared that, and he hopes the Dynamo are working on it. But within MLS means that he has a few players that he's pegged, and they're players that we're not considering. I can guarantee it. Zelalem may be one of them. I'm not 100% certain on that. As much as I like the kid as a player, I don't know if... I know he fits what Tab wants to do, but I don't know if Tab is keen on trying to land him right now.
I'd be happy.
Yeah. There are other players out there, though, that Tab has coached previously or that he has connections with through his different networks that I think are players that nobody has thought that Tab would want, or players that nobody's really talking about being linked with Tab, that Tab can ultimately could make a move for. And yes, I do want to throw this out there. I'm leaning heavily on the fact that Tab is the one calling the shots right now. We tweeted out earlier, or retweeted Glenn Davis's Soccer Matters tweet talking about how Tuesday night they're going to have on Matt Jordan. And somebody made the comment, yeah, I feel the same way. Somebody made the comment, and I think I agree with them that, that kind of is the signal that Matt Jordan's going to be back for 2021. And I can be okay with that. And here's how I can be okay with that if Tab is the one calling the shots. And Matt Jordan is basically just there to help with the business side. Look, Matt Jordan, as a business guy, he's decent. He can handle it. It's not a big deal. But as a player talent acquisition man, he has been subpar, and I completely agree with you on that. But if that falls to Tab, if that responsibility becomes Tab's to handle, then I think that I can accept Matt Jordan in that role, handling just strictly business transactions, or transactions, so to speak, and letting Tab actually be the one who's picking out what players we go after.
I think I could agree with another comment from that tweet from another user that said, you can just basically press play from a recording from a previous interview from Matt Jordan. That's all the answers you're going to get from him.
Look, I'm not trying to tell you guys not to tune into Soccer Matters, but yeah, if you want to hear ahead of time what Matt Jordan is going to say, just play that recording. Just play the podcast episode from 2020 in like January or February when he had Matt Jordan on, and I guarantee you it's going to sound exactly the same with probably some of the same lines. Talking about the 3 buckets, talking about how important core values are, talking about how we're looking to go younger, talking about how we're looking to spend, but spend reasonably, spend well, intelligently, and how we got players we're looking at, but we couldn't really share anything concrete at this point, and how we're very happy with who we already have.
We just had Matt Jordan on Generation Orange. Hey, welcome, Matt.
I need to shave a little bit. I'm getting a little thicker than him on top, but no, I mean that's Matt Jordan in a nutshell. But the GM does not have to be someone who's a public figure. The GM needs to be someone who makes good business transactions. And he's tried, but he's failed. But transactionally, he's made good moves. Now, talent-wise, he's been missing. I've heard from sources that Jordan didn't make a lot of the decisions as far as who to go after. Those were kids that were basically he was pointed to. And if that is the case, again, I point to Tab being the one really calling the shots, and it's more or less Matt putting Matt working the contract over to get over the line, so to speak. And again, unfortunately, go ahead.
But then again, it's like I said, like we said prior, we said numerous times here on the show, regardless if it's Matt or if it's whoever else that comes in, like I said, they can bring in somebody from the understudy at Seattle Sounders to come in here. But if you're not given the funds needed to bring in the required amount of players and the required amount of talent that needs to be brought here to take this team to another level, then it doesn't matter. You and me, Sean, can do the GM thing and do as sucky a job as there has been done the last couple of years. So I mean, like I said, it's one of those things where, yeah, I wish there was better scouting. Maybe if there was a better scouting team or department, they can find those diamonds in the roughs more often, more frequently. But now you're just praying. Now you're just praying for something to happen. And that's not the way these businesses work. You have other teams globally who have way for superior scouting departments who are doing the same thing, trying to look for that diamond in the rough, and they're going to find them before we do. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, if you're tuned in and listening, obviously you appreciate what we have to say and to bring to the conversation. Thank you for tuning in, of course. We appreciate you guys in chat. I know that
for sure,
you have plenty of options for who to absorb your Dynamo information, news, and otherwise from, i.e. Soccer Matters, The Peel, etc. But we appreciate you choosing us, at least for tonight. With that being said, if you could do us a favor and make sure to follow us on Twitter at Gen Orange Radio. And make sure you hit that subscribe button now, because there's a subscribe button on our channel here on Twitch, twitch.tv/Generation Orange. Hit that subscribe button. We appreciate it. And all you guys that actually watch the ads to start the show, hey, really, really appreciate you. And yes, we have hit affiliate on Twitch finally, which means you will get to see an ad before we roll the show. But we promise only the one ad, unless you refresh the page like Eric did like 6 times. Then, hey, 6 ads. We appreciate that too. But
I think we sold a burrito this morning. This before the show started. We sold a burrito.
We sold a burrito. Hey, we sold a burrito. But very, very much so, guys. We appreciate you always, and we will be back very soon with plenty more to talk about Dynamo-wise. There's a lot of off-season still to go. There's the draft still to happen, re-entry draft. There's the not allocation, the re-entry draft. There's the free agency period. There's also a half-day trade window that's coming up right before the expansion draft. There's the expansion draft as well with Austin FC picking players for their expansion team. That is something we will have to talk about in a future episode very soon. Who's on our protected list now that we have an idea more of who is going to be on the roster and who's not on the roster. But yeah, anything closing thoughts there, Mark?
Oh, man, like I said, appreciate all you guys with us. I know that we had to stick with one thing, but sometimes you can go on to another thing. But I appreciate the activity on chat, guys. Follow us on Gen Orange Radio on Twitter. Follow myself at Segovia, at Sean Ringrose. I know we try to be as active and try to reply back to you guys when you talk to us on Twitter. We try to get back to you as soon as possible. But yeah, man, if nothing else, just holding it down.
Hold it down. Let's go.